Good morning, YouTube. We're in Monterey this morning. We're going to fly to, let me see here. I have it written down. Let me check my notes. Lemoore is the name of it. The weather is stormy, um, so we'll see how that goes. I am still matching the real world weather conditions, and this morning I'm using TrackIR again. So I imagine we'll experience some winds. I didn't look to see what the winds are like, but when we check with ATIS, we'll be able to determine that information. Um, I think I'll go ahead and start a pushback right now.
Sending push cart now.
I have everything looked up for what I intend for the flight to be, which runway I'd like to land at, and hopefully, ATIS will just correspond. But that might not be the case, so I'll be changing it in flight if necessary. All right, let me release my brake so he can push us back. I do sip coffee as I do these flights and just realize anytime the screen blips like that, it's because my coffee mug has somehow gotten in the way of that TrackIR and it's deflecting some of the signal back to it and it makes it go haywire for a second. In some instances, I'll be able to switch to an outside or external view to avoid that happening. All right, so flight plan. We'll be doing, this flight is going to be about 92.8 miles, 45 minutes. We'll set the nav radio to 113.3 for a waypoint, but we'll also do GPS guidance as well. Our general nav bearing will be 086 degrees. KNLC. So let me program the radio for ATIS 121.575. We'll see if we can pick it up before we get it into the air, but many times I'm finding that doesn't work. Yeah, there it goes. 1, 2, 5, 5, 7. It won't let me put that last 5 in there. We'll hit it anyways. And switch it. Alright, we'll fly to about 7,000 feet. I'm going to set this to 086. 6, 7, 8. 5, 6. Alright, and we'll check magnetic north after I've started the aircraft. Our approach 32 left at Frog, PHROG. What you doing there, guy? Please don't, just go ahead, and if I'm in your way, feel free. Yeah, the artificial vehicles and whatnot. Oh, I didn't do the mixture and the... Leave a lot to be desired in that regard. They need to have some proximity awareness, I do believe. So I'll do a magnetic north, check my flaps, the yaw, trim, rudders, all that. I'll check it once we're on the runway here. All right, helicopter. And I'm getting pushed around a little bit there. Okay, do external. Move the keyboard out of the way there so I can do that. Things looking good there. Lights are looking good. Okay, we're east. East and 12, so it needs to be on this side of it just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm getting pushed significantly over to the right. Rotating.
Traffic, traffic. Traffic, traffic.
Yeah, and there's that helicopter. So we're familiar and aware of it, but at the rate he's going and the rate I'm going, we're good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and set the autopilot. Get us nav, vertical speed. We got a little bit to watch out for here this morning. We are increasing in altitude. We should be okay before we reach it. As you can see, it's very windy out there, being bounced around. and you can see the aircraft is flying at a significant angle to stay straight. $3,500, 7,000. With the limited visibility, I kind of want to be higher in altitude, but I can use or rely on the GPS to help determine that. So I may, once there's nothing red in front of our path, I'll probably do an altitude hold. Sorry about that. So I'm using the clip on the brim of my hat, and you know, the TrackIR detects it, but the TrackIR itself is not pointed directly at my head. I haven't quite gotten it positioned exactly the way that it needs to be, so it's pointed downwards, almost at my yoke a little bit. So anytime I bring that reflective surface, that mug of coffee, near my mouth, which is also in between the brim of my hat and the yoke, we see that little blip. So with that being said, you could probably easily reconstruct a clip using reflective tape, and TrackIR would be able to accept the reflections back from it. Now I do have a different device that actually clips onto, looks like a headset. My headset's rather bulky, so it doesn't fit on mine. But I may try rigging that somehow to get that to work. I may do an altitude hold here at 5,500 feet, or maybe 6,000. Let's just do 6,000 for a good round number. And I think I'll look at the mixture here, see if we can get a little extra power. No, we're losing power there. So right there is about the best we're going to do. I can decrease this a little bit. That'll help get us some speed. And we're at a decent climb speed, but I just don't want it to get too close to stall while I'm above these mountains and in these winds. I'm not in a hurry to get above them either, so I don't need to climb out at 700 feet per minute. I think I'm going to do an altitude hold here because I kind of like the idea of being under the clouds a little bit. I feel if I go a little bit further, we're going to be right in them. Now I'm reducing the throttle to 2,500. Nah, we need to climb higher. We need to go higher. Alright, we're there about 6,000 feet, altitude hold. I'll watch the RPMs, keep us at 2,500. I'm going to look at ATIS for a second here. To 1.575. Yeah, it's 121.575. So we weren't able to put that last 5 in, but I'm hoping 125.57 will still check in with ATIS when we, get within range. We're 86 miles away, so. That cloud coverage there. We're just underneath it. Now, despite the winds in the cloud, I haven't seen any storms yet. And this is supposed to be stormy weather, but I don't see any lightning. And it's not quite as dark as I was expecting it to be. But it could get there. We have time. We are matching the real world weather conditions. We just aren't matching real world time. I did consider with the stormy weather not actually doing the flight this morning, but to stay grounded. But we can fly in some winds and storm, and unless it's a hurricane, or unless we're getting rained on and it's icing over, we should be all right. We can make it. Trim's just working away there. When we were flying here in the Cirrus Vision SF50, we were flying along this valley floor before we came into Monterey to avoid the mountains. We were trying to reach the the approach altitude, however, so a descent was necessary. But for us, we can increase altitude or decrease, doesn't matter. Let me look at my approach altitude real quick. Looks like my arrival altitude is 1,800 feet. It makes me wonder if that's a typo. So, let me look at my flight plan. $1,800 feet. So, most of our distance is to Frog. And then after we get to Frog, or around the time we're near Frog, we need to start descending to 1,800 feet. So by the time we hit Lerny, we're at 1,800. Now I don't know if this will auto descend, the GTN750, this device. So what I can do is see, maybe once we reach a dusted, an area that requires a certain altitude, maybe it will begin the approach. Oh, it is raining, so hopefully it's not cold enough to freeze. I'm going to put this on mute for a minute, and I'm going to check with Alexa to see what the temperature is in California. It's 50 degrees, so it shouldn't ice over. In the event I start losing power and I notice and I even think that this plane is icing over, I'll begin my descent and slowing the aircraft down and landing it anywhere that I can find a spot to avoid a crash. That's the plan. And when the aircraft's de-icing, you can typically tell, because it starts losing power for no reason. You're like, what's going on? And then it loses power, loses altitude. And the Cessna 172 SP has no way to de-ice. At least the one I'm in. I have pitted heat, fuel pump, radio and panel lights. I don't know what that little knob is down there. Let's see what that is. Static air pull. We have cabin heat. We could turn that on. Those buttons are inactive. Let's see what's in the glove box here. Bobblehead. We've played with Austin Meyer before on the dash. So yeah, not much for de-icing on the Cessna, unfortunately. I do like matching the real world weather conditions, not flying, clear skies all the time. I like a little bit more of a challenge, even if it does make my landings a little less soft, a little more challenging. It's just more interesting, I think, to try to make it more real. And I would do more nighttime flying, but with that, the videos, they don't do as well when they're darker. So for that, I've just been leaving it around 9 a.m. somewhere between 7:30 and 9 for the daytime hours in California. Maybe I'll set it to noon, but yeah, so for the time of frame when we're flying, it's not accurate, but at least we can still match the real world weather for the challenge. And if you're interested and you want to see a nighttime flight, just leave me a comment or something. If you haven't, please subscribe. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. If there's any particular videos you want me to do or something you'd like to see, an aircraft you'd like me to use, just leave a comment. I've been thinking of relearning how to fly the helicopter. I haven't actually taken the time out to do it yet. but I think the helicopter would come in handy for many of our touring flights, or when we're, you know, trying to check out scenery. Cessna's the next best alternative, in my opinion, as far as an aircraft that goes slow enough to be able to be used for tours and scenes and slow flying. And it's an easy aircraft to fly for the most part, so it's kind of relaxing and fun to do as well. Yeah, I'm waving my hand in front of my face, and that doesn't really seem to be affecting anything as far as TrackIR, but I put that mug there. I am wearing readers as well, so that's somewhat reflective, but apparently it's not much of an issue in comparison to the mug. The readers are, you know, allowing the light to pass through more than reflecting, perhaps. Little dents here. I'm hoping we'll just pass through it. Enough to not be able to see the ground anymore. There we go. There's some ground. With that, you know, looking at the GPS, we're getting to where we're about to fly over these mountains, so if we're anywhere close to them, that could be a detriment. I can no longer see in front of me well enough to compensate, so we might fly into one of these mountains if I'm not high enough. Well, from that view, everything's looking good so far. When I'm setting up my flight plans, I don't try to be 100% accurate. I don't spend too much time looking at altitudes along flight paths between fixes and whatnot. I just glance. So if I see something that says 8,000, I'm thinking, okay, at least 8,000. If I see something that says 6,000, so, you know, I kind of lightly guess what altitude I need to be at. You know, make a calculated guess as opposed to perfectly accurate, because we're not actually flying from a fix to a fix. You know, we're flying across some of these paths, and with that, you know, is the potential to misjudge something, meaning I could potentially hit one of these mountains and never even realize that that potential was there. So with the more of a cloud coverage, it puts me more at risk, and it's a real possibility, which is why I'm mentioning it. But when I'm setting up the flight, I'm not necessarily expecting, you know, poor weather or dense fog or clouds to prevent me from being able to see what's in front of me. But I do get the altitude or a general idea of what altitude I need to be at, just in case. So it does help if my educated guess is correct as opposed to incorrect. At least I'm looking, you know, at least I'm putting some effort into it, not just haphazardly doing this. but in some respect, you could say I'm also haphazardly doing it. Just depends on how you want to look at it. But see, I'm not going for 100%. So if I were going for 100%, I would be really sure. I could sit here and say, oh, we're not going to have to worry at all. We're at 6,000 feet, and there's no potential at all whatsoever that we're going to hit anything. But I don't know that because I didn't put that much effort into it. I just glanced at the lines and said, okay, yeah, I don't see anything above 6,000, so let me do 6,000 and see what happens. And we haven't gotten any information from any ATIS yet whatsoever, so we don't know what the altimeter should be set to. If the altimeter is set off incorrectly, that could mess us up by a couple hundred feet, a few hundred feet. So this flight is going to turn out much longer than expected. We do have a little bit of a headwind, crosswind. That's why we're flying at an angle. And with that, it must be a significantly or a somewhat strong one. As you know, we're doing what, 115, 120 knots, and our ground speed is 107 knots. So let me give it a little more power. Keep it not right near red line. See if I can't get us moving a little faster. And I will adjust the mixture again here. No, we're losing power there. And going too rich, losing power. So right there is good. About where I had it is the best. So now we're what? 130, working on 135 knots. Our ground speed is at almost 120 knots. That'll help get us there a little quicker. So what I do when I'm setting up these flights, I have a spreadsheet that I use that basically is a list of all the information I personally want for these flights. I'm going to have to turn that way in order to see it, and it's going to affect my view on the screen. But my spreadsheet, I have the departure airport, the arrival airport, the distance and estimated time, the nav radio I want to tune into, and the bearing to that radio from that departing airport, the altitude I intend to fly at, the minimum decision altitude for the runway I'm landing at, the ATIS comm information, the arrival altitude, and for that I'm looking at the approach plate. So I go ahead and based on my bearing, I decide which runway I'd like to land at or what runway is available for an RNAV landing at that particular airport. Then I also have the initial fix, the transition to the approach. So like Frog in this instance, I knew what to pick because I had that information there on my spreadsheet. And if I didn't mention it, I have the arrival altitude as well. I also have which aircraft I intend to use, as well as which device, like the G530, the GTN750, or the G1000, and depending on things that I'm looking at while I'm looking at, or setting up the flight, that's when I determine which device I might use. we're doing almost 125 knots now. But we are right at red line there. And that's probably not a good way to fly. But to expedite things, we'll let it be. This once, at least. Oh, you know what? It's 121.575.
Lemoore NAS information India. 1600 Zulu weather. Wind 110 at 12. Visibility more than 10. Rain. Sky conditions 4,800 broken. 7,800 overcast. Temperature 82.2. Altimeter 3000. Arriving runway 14 right. Departing runway 14 right. Advise on initial contact you have India.
Okay, so 14 right, and altimeter at 3000. So we're right there as far as the altimeter goes. That's fine. We're gonna have to switch our procedure to 14 right. I don't know how much time this will take away or add to our flight. I do want to switch the information on my spreadsheet. 14 right. And that's going to change the minimum decision altitude and the fix. We'll do HELMM. I don't know which is the most ideal. Let's do one that doesn't say course reversal when we choose it. So it looks like we're flying out this way now. Okay, helm, HELMM. Let me put that in my spreadsheet. HELMM. And I need to look at the approach plate for that. So right, GPS RNAV. Our approaching altitude is 2,800 feet and our MDA is 429. So that didn't change much. My MDA was 428, this is 429. But our altitude that we need to be at when we get there has changed. So with that being said, let me look at the flight plan here. 2,800 feet by the time we reach helm. So what's our distance out? When we're about 10 minutes out, I'll start descending because we're going to be in a valley here by the look of it. This is all green. There won't be much challenges as far as our altitude is concerned. With that being said, let's step outside. Not much of anything to see there. Speaking of altitude, and I'm not paying attention to what's in front of me because I'm looking at these modifications we're making during flight. But yeah, in about 10 more miles, I'll probably start descending to 2,800 feet once we're over these mountains. Our ground speed is 144 knots now. So that wind is working in our favor now. I really wish I could see what was below me. I don't like not being able to see, having any doubts. But once we start descending, probably between 2,000 and 3,000 feet, we'll be able to see again, more than likely. We're probably experiencing this dense fog because we're at this higher altitude and because we're above the mountains. If I start seeing any trees or anything that looks close, I'll disengage the autopilot and I'll nose up. We are going at a pretty good clip, so we should be able to gain altitude fast if necessary. But we are almost over these mountains, and they're probably not even so close. They're dropping off even as I speak. See, we're a little bit in a valley, but when we're zoomed out, it looks much worse than it really is. So it's probably safe to go ahead and start our descent, and I'm going to do that. We'll descend at 500 feet per minute, and we'll do it with 2,500 RPMs. And I'll just watch the altitude indicator until we're at 3,000 feet, 2,800 feet, and then I'll re-engage the autopilot altitude hold. I would like to look out the window, but I do kind of want to see what's in front of me as well. So. The instrument landing is more of a sure thing with the GTN750 than it is with the G530, so it was probably a wise choice to have the GTN750 for this flight. And the only better choice would have been the G1000. Alright, we're coming just out of the clouds now. We're able to see what's in front of us, the valley floor. It's great. Let's see if we can see any of the mountains a little bit behind us there. We're not bobbing around quite as much as we were, but once we turn in for the runway, that could change. So I don't want to count my chickens just yet. But if we were to stay this steady on landing, that would be great. Give it a few more RPMs. We were like 2450 instead of 2500. Closing in on 4,000 feet. Mm-hmm. 3,000 feet, 200 more feet will level off at 2,800. Altitude hold at 2,800 feet. And now just watch the RPMs to maintain 2,500 RPMs. Or more. For all those mountains, a whole lot of valley. So it looks like we're flying out to that one fix and then turning and flying back. I'd rather just fly to that fix, but or maybe that's if we were to do, that might be, let's pull that out and look at it. That might be if we had to do, no it's not. Okay, never mind. Yeah, we're flying out here and then turning and come back. That must be our airport over there. Sort of looks like a runway. Two runways. And we're doing 28, no, we're doing 14 right. So that one there. Go ahead and turn landing and taxi back on so we don't have to think to do it later. And I just hit a button I didn't mean to. We lost power as a result. So let me see what I did. Okay. I'll have to see what that button's assigned to, but I can check it later. We seem to be okay, but yeah, I pressed a button I wasn't supposed to when I was trying to turn on my landing and taxi lights. Should be making that turn here in a minute. So with an L-shaped lake. Must be a man-made lake. Oh, well, we can stick our head out and look. At our next fix, I'll be watching to see if the approach lights up. Once we make that left-hand turn. That'll be important to me. I'm going to back down to 2,500 RPMs. It'll slow us down a little bit, not too much. You're looking right here to see that approach enables, and it will. I just like to watch it and ensure. And it might not enable till the next fix, but I can start slowing the aircraft down and prepping anyways. Oh, there it goes. Approach is on. So let's begin slowing the aircraft down. I get it to about 2,000 RPMs, and then I'll let it slow down a little bit and deploy some flaps. Alright, some flaps. Thousand RPMs. More flaps. And once we've intercepted the glide slope fully, I'll do a final stage of flaps. But until then, 2,000 RPMs. Maybe a bit more to keep it going a little faster. Okay, so the weather just changed on us a little bit. You don't want to make it easy, I guess. Now our nose is bouncing around some. Not too bad, not yet. Give it a bit more power until we get the glide slope. About 2,200 RPMs. And by glide slope, I mean glide path. We're going a little bit faster than I want to, so I'm backing it down some. I think I'll try 2,100 RPMs. think magnetic is off just by a little bit, so I might try to adjust it some. Nope, wrong way. Maybe one more nudge, and we'll call it a day. And heading bug we can set to 1.4. Just pretending that we're using the G530. It's not so necessary with the GTN750. I might do this another nudge here. Excuse me. Still yet to intercept the glide path, so it's like we're sitting still. I can't check our ground speed because the visual icon is in its place. Oh yeah, if we have, 15, 20 mile an hour winds, we're going 70 knots, it's going to feel like we're doing 50. We are going to be, we are flying at an angle too, so it's not going to look lined up. Even if I get magnetic north perfect, we're not going to look lined up because the nose of the aircraft is going to be facing the direction of the wind, or the opposite direction of the wind. Yeah, it's going to be facing the wind as it approaches us from the left or from the right. You know what I'm saying? We're going to fly left into it if it's approaching us from the left. So technically speaking, the wind direction would be to the right, and we'll have to fly left to compensate. But, before the wind gets to us, it's approaching us from the left, so therefore we turn left into it. Alright, so we should be initiating a glide slope here any second. Be watching our monitoring for that, for the descent. And then I'll adjust the throttle to compensate to get it around 60 knots as we land. Now, why are we not? I feel the need to click it. Maybe because I didn't have altitude. I don't know, but I'm going to disengage the autopilot and so it's not doing the glide slope. I don't know what's going on there. And now that I've done that, I've really messed up the aircraft because I've really trimmed to compensate. So the MDA was really high on this one. No, the autopilot didn't work the way I wanted it to for some reason. Mistake on my part, I suppose. Alright, I'm reducing the throttle so we'll drop back down to the glide path. And I'm still at just 2 flaps, I think. Yeah, I didn't do full flaps yet. But depending on how windy it is, I may not do full flaps. I think we're certainly encountering head/crosswinds because it seems like we're sitting still as we're approaching. It's taking a long time to get, to inch my way there. And with it being a headwind too, that explains why it's so much of a challenge to drop back down to the glide path. No worries, this is what we wanted, isn't it? A challenge. I'm going to give it more power and some trim to get it to nose down and try to get it to get back on the glide path. And it might be okay if I'm above it while we're approaching it, given the winds. Oh, I'm below it. What am I talking about? I'm below it, and I'm trying to get down to it. So I think I need some more coffee. I was like, no, that can't be right. That runway does not look right at all. I think I'll stop talking and pay attention here. Trying really hard to fly over there to the runway. And it does not want to go. I'm not going to do full flaps. That's what I had there was full flaps, and I don't like the feel of that. It's too much drag on the aircraft, and I'm having enough challenge of getting it there. So right now, I don't think I have, no, I have one flap. Yeah, one flap. Okay, Mr. Airplane, why don't you go over there? I'm doing 80 knots, but our ground speed is probably closer to 60.
Traffic.
Flaps up, and I'll be looking for the next exit. You'll have to excuse me for not being on the lines on that one. What is that building over there? That's interesting. Can we cross this? We're going to... Is this a prison, or what is this building? Alright, let's try this again. Alright. Replay. And I probably did slam the gear down. I tried not to, but if I did, it wasn't as bad as it was yesterday. Not too bad, all things considered. All right, YouTube, thank you for watching and have a good day.